I spent the weekend in Minneapolis covering the general strike on Friday, and then the following events that happened on Saturday with the murder of Alex Pretti. I really want to dive deep into what those experiences looked like when I was out there. We have a couple clips that we'll go over, but I'd love to also hear what's happening in Washington, D.C. I know while I was in Minneapolis, I saw solidarity movements across the country in different metropolitan areas. So I'm really excited to hear what that sounded like. Yeah, so on Friday, there was one of the largest strikes in Minneapolis history. I think it was the first general strike since 1934, so almost a century, where there were over 700 businesses within the Minneapolis region that completely closed down. They did so voluntarily. And workers, students, people from their everyday community all gathered in the streets in below 0 degree temperature in order to say they will not allow this type of terror to continue in their communities. And it was really inspiring. Let me see if I have those clips just to show them.
And I think one of the things that's most impressed me with the community response is that people are so willing and ready to get out and show their opposition despite the harsh weather conditions. I mean, I would imagine that's part of the reason they went into Minnesota when they did, is so that they could go unimpeded under the assumption that people wouldn't be protesting in sub-zero temperatures. But I think what we've seen in Minnesota, what we've seen in other places, Chicago, here in DC, is that is not enough to stop community response.
Yeah, we also know like the decision making from the Trump administration is so politically motivated. It is not about national security, or it is not about hotbeds of fraud in particular areas. But they did this immediately after people forget like the breakdown of the butterfly effect of how Nicole Good was killed. But this all started because a YouTuber by the name of Nick Shirley released a expose going over fraud cases that have already been investigated in previous years within like the certain tax pools within Minnesota. And that video led to a storm fire of the Trump administration, J.D. Vance, Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, boosting this to the entire country, and then using that as a distraction from the anger from the Trump base of the Epstein file redactions. So it's just crazy to see all of it play out together as a macro narrative of this distraction led to Operation Metro Surge, which was over 2,000 ICE agents that were deployed to Minneapolis, seemingly because of this YouTube video and the anger that it generated on the right. And then that led to peaceful legal observers who were executed in the street by ICE agents. It's just such a wild timeline to see the full picture of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, going from that YouTuber to even prior to that, when different far right provocateurs or agitators were trying to get something going in Minnesota. About a month or so ago, I was tracking basically White House propagandists. Over this last summer, the White House brought about 15 or so far right influencers to the White House and told them that they would give them special discretion and special protection, really, to go and disperse their message. And so people were trying it a bunch in Minnesota, a bunch of different angles. Nothing was sticking, and then this YouTube video took off, and now we have 2 people dead.
Yeah, 2 people dead and a pissed off city. The Twin Cities is very unique in their ability to mobilize in the streets and with their communities. I mean, this is the same hotbed that sparked the national protests against police brutality in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. I mean, this is a community that understands the power in collective action, the power in solidarity, and the need for people to demand change from their government. We talk all the time about the 3.5% rule when it comes to the nation. Minnesota is really leading that momentum. And if Minnesota is the blueprint of what other cities are doing in the rest of the country, we will start to see reforms, because when people hit people in positions of power where it hurts the most, which is their economic momentum, when we have more general strikes and people showing we are the ones that make this country run, and if we all collectively understand that we cannot let the system run as it is, if we continue to get people murdered by these terrorists, we have to be able to channel that energy in so many different places across the country.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, because you were there on the day of the general strike in Minnesota. What does that look like? I mean, are businesses up in arms, or are police on the streets trying to corral people, or was it just a a broad moment of solidarity.
It's kind of D, all the above. I mean, this is a small clip just doing a in-depth zoom of all the different types of people there. We had people that were elementary school teachers. We had people that were local organizers and union leaders. We had people banging on their drums, folks that were out there with barely any protection from the wind. And we kept trying to pan, and we just couldn't even get the full grasp of how many people were there. I think most estimates, my balls are frozen, but my rage is lit. Like, those are the signs that just it's incredible to see the type of passion and anger that these communities have, and anger is an emotion that really is necessary when you don't see any actual change done in systems that are harming people. I mean, we've talked for so long. I know every conversation I've had with conservatives, we need to have limited government and people's civil rights that are protected against a tyrannical regime. We're watching that happen in the street. And I think even like I've seen libertarians that are also furious that we have federal agents being able to kill people who legally were armed and who were there with self-defense weapons without discharging them. Like, I really do think that we are sowing the seeds of momentum for just overall general dissatisfaction with the way that this country is moving towards.
Yeah, no, totally. I've kind of seen it, and I'm sure most people have, as a slow growth, where when Trump first took office last January, there was no semblance of opposition. People were dismayed, people were disheartened, they didn't know where to look for leadership, and so they were aimless. And then we saw the rise of the 50-51 movement, no kings, and there were these monthly massive million people protests across the country. And now we're seeing that those movements have built these community networks and community mutual aid groups, so that now we can have rapid responses. When someone is assaulted, killed, detained, abducted by ICE, there's immediately a group of people, not just in Minnesota, but in Phoenix, in LA, in Chicago, anywhere. These groups and networks are there, and they're ready to have these rapid responses to act when they see something improper happening. So I think it's exactly what you're saying.
There's a huge misconception that like all of these protests are symbolic, or it's virtue signaling, or it's people that just want to take photos and bring signs and yada, yada, yada. And that rhetoric is really dismissive of the recruitment apparatus that is inside these protests, with exactly what you're saying. Mutual aid groups, community organizers, people who are getting people and capitalizing on that emotion and energy and dissatisfaction into direct action, which is people who are opening their homes to people who are terrified of going to work because they know that they could get brutalized by a federal agent, or people that have ICE Watch community patrolling, where they are going about communities, making sure that they're notifying their neighbors that there are federal agents that want to rip them from their homes, patrolling their neighborhoods. And I think that really is the effectiveness of these types of protests and mobilizations, is it takes it from, okay, people are pissed off and don't know what to do, so they take to the streets. And then through that anger and through that emotion, that is channeled into direct action that does help save these communities from further terrorist actions from the government.
Right. And I feel like to an extent it also, and we've seen this, is it gives the people back the power that a democracy is supposed to afford its citizenry. People don't feel like the police are protecting them, so now we protect us. People are afraid to go to work, and then we have an economic boycott to take that power back, to say, no, we're not going to let you exploit our labor and live in fear just so that we can pay into your system. We're taking that power back. And I think that is why there are so many haphazard, dangerous moves being seen at the federal level, is because they're expecting total submission. They want us to dismiss these protests as just performative. They want people to stop showing up. And when they don't, it causes them to lash out in unexpected and, detrimental ways for their fascist movement.
And those are really the only two options, right? It's either they capitulate and they give in to the demands that the public is yearning for, or they double down and crack down even harder, with further reveals the authoritarian repression that's inherent in the system. And I think both of those are successes, because people are like, why would we want them to crack down more? They're already doing that. They're killing people in the street. Us taking action and mobilizing is not going to make it any worse than it already is, because it is already unaccountable federal agents that are able to murder people without any accountability. I don't understand the idea of some people who say, oh yeah, that's sad, but let's move on. Like you can't really do anything about it. Like, no, this really is the test of where you stand, what line are you on in moments of history. And that means you helping your communities. I understand that not everybody has the physical capacity to go out and protest. I don't think that that is necessary, but everybody has a way that they can help, whether that is through community organizing, whether that's donating to mutual aid groups, whether that is getting out in the streets if you don't have it monetarily, like whatever the case, like there are ways that you can utilize the emotions that you have for these issues in order to bring about systemic change.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, again, Minnesota is, unfortunately for the residents, it's kind of ground zero for this moment right now that we're seeing. And what I'm seeing from afar, and what I'm sure you saw on the ground, is that people there aren't rolling over. They're not saying, well, we just need to move on with their lives. They're saying Alex and his family, they can't move on with their lives. Renee can't move on with her life because they ended it. Her family, they are forever changed because of this. And it's not something that we can do to say, oh, well, I guess this is just the cost of doing business. We'll have to change it the next election. People need that change now, and they need to see that it's working.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think that's why, I mean, I haven't seen a single night where people are not organizing together in Minneapolis. And it's impressive. I talked about in a different conversation. I'm from LA. I've been to a lot of protests and demonstrations. There is like a sense of emotion and anger, and people do understand the value in community. But when I was in Minneapolis, the coordination from all levels of institutions, where you have state officials that are on the ground marching with people, you have local businesses that are opening up their doors in order to provide security, warmth, and even food and nutrients in some cases. And then you have the citizenry, where people who are not, or from neighborhoods that aren't being patrolled. You have people from Powderhorn, you have people from Minnehaha, like all of these places in the surrounding suburbs of Minneapolis coming into the city and flooding the streets to show solidarity for their fellow Minnesotans. Like that was what was so impressive to me. And I think that if we do see that across the country with that coordination of every aspect of institutions coming together to demand that change, I mean, what else are they going to do? There were reports today that Trump is considering removing ICE agents from Minnesota, and I'm kind of holding my breath until I see it happen. But I mean, those rumors alone are already something that is showing that this is sparking some sort of nervousness and anxiety in the Trump administration that feels invincible. These are the same people that watch someone kill a woman who is driving away and fleeing a scene after being surrounded by ICE agents and call her a domestic terrorist within 30 minutes. Like there is no shame in the Trump administration. And I think that we're starting to see a bit of shame or a bit of tactics changing. It really shows the effectiveness and the efficacy of these people going out in the street.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it can't be emphasized enough that people recognizing their power is what puts people in power in a place of fear and where they know that they need to do something and change. Not only is he floating the idea of taking people out of Minnesota, but he's also switching up leadership. Kristi Noem is not very well liked by most of the country. And she has, she's been one of the first people to falsely call Renee Good a terrorist, and to say that, Alex was this vicious killer or would-be killer when neither of those things are true. And now the Trump administration is putting her in the back seat. They're instead sending one of the White House officials, Tom Homan, he's known as a border czar, but he doesn't actually work for Border Patrol. They're sending him into Minnesota to start to make things less bombastic, because that's what Noem is. She's just a made-for-TV personality, whereas Homan is more boots on the ground. Like he's there to want to get things done, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, he has insane rhetoric talking about undocumented people. But what I will say is he was one of the only Trump admin officials who said we need an investigation to take place into both Renee and Alex Pretti. And I think he wants to show that the federal government is at least somewhat willing to have transparency or show that they're working within the legal process, where Noem just completely throws that to the wayside. Not only is there no investigation for civil rights case into Renee Good, but the Department of Justice choosing instead to go after Becca Good, her widow, in order to see what type of political action that she's been into. Like, everybody knows that this is corrupt, which is why 6 officials at the DOJ resigned who are Republicans, because they know that they don't want to be in the history books as going after a widow of someone who's killed by the federal government.
Right, right. Well, and there was a brain drain, and now there's a loyalty drain, where anyone who is not sufficiently loyal to do these things, which Trump wants them to do whatever he says, but he doesn't control every branch of government. He doesn't control every facet of justice, and so if the only people left are the ones who will do whatever he says, then they're not going to be successful, because there's no standing to investigate the grieving widow of someone killed by a federal law enforcement officer. There's no standing to have these public executions of regular people just out living their life, exercising their constitutional rights. And so that's why, the actions of Noam, even though I'm sure he loves it, he doesn't like the end result negativity that it's getting. And so that's why he's sending people in like Homan, which, silver lining, that does open up Noam. It makes her more vulnerable to a potential impeachment and conviction for what she's been doing.
100%. There needs to be accountability. I think prison time is the moderate position for these people that are destroying the fabric of our country. I think that I have a lot of arguments with people about what Trump's political convictions are. Personally, I don't think that he has a political conviction. I think that he operates on a sense of narcissism, and he adopts political positions that will get him that attention from his base. So above all, I think Trump wants to be liked. And I agree with you. I think that he notices the negativity across the country, both Democrats, independents. I've never seen a poll that has showed that above 50% of independents want ICE abolished. Like, this is a tenable goal in the near future, to get rid of this agency that was developed in wake of 9/11 as a paranoia response to counterterrorism movement. Like, this is not a bedrock institution of America. We have agencies already that are supposed to handle drug trafficking, the DEA, the FBI tackling violent criminals who are engaging in conspiracy to actually harm neighborhoods. Like, these are agencies that are already in place to attach these issues. ICE was never meant to do that. ICE is a tool of fear of the federal government to show what the feds are capable of doing to those that they deem as threats. I mean, it started off as them rounding up random Muslim Americans in the wake of 9/11 and sending them to Guantanamo Bay because there was apparent connection to Al Qaeda, even though the only apparent connection was ethnicity and religious practice. Like, this is not an institution that we need in order for people to feel safe. And if anything, Minnesotans, Californians, New Yorkers, people all across the country are showing ICE actually brings more harm to their communities than it does any sense of security or safety.
Yeah, no, I mean, the majority of homicides in Minnesota now are conducted by federal law enforcement officers.
66% of killings, is from ICE. It is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, as the Trump administration is trying to dismantle all these different areas of government, which do have much longer standing than ICE, I mean, the Department of Education comes to my mind because it's been around for my entire life, my parents' entire life. And it's something that has proven itself to be a net benefit on society. And yet his whole thing is dismantling it. He put someone in that position, McMahon, the wrestling producer. She runs the Department of Education, and she wants to destroy the Department of Education. And so if something that institutional can be dismantled in the course of a year, then I don't see why ICE and DHS more broadly can be also dismantled, and the things that are useful from those agencies be disseminated to where they can actually do some good.
We are talking about billions of dollars that is funneled into this domestic terrorist organization, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. And I can't imagine what that money would be able to do for American families who are struggling, American families who are suffering right now. There's so much that our government is capable of doing that it chooses not to. And every time I talk to a conservative who says, I don't want food stamps to go to single mothers because that's my money and they don't deserve it. Your taxes are going to get taxed anyway. Your money is going to go to the government. It's either going to go to these militaristic agents that are ripping people from their homes who oftentimes have been here for 10 to 20 years, or it's going to go to the struggling mother who needs food to survive, for her children's to survive. Like, I don't understand this, like, this quarrel that people have when it comes to what our government is capable of, because our government is always going to do things. It's just either going to be for the benefit of the American people, or it's going to be for the terror and fear tactics to keep us under control.
Right. Well, I mean, even those families who are getting torn away and abducted and put into these detention centers for who knows how long, they were also paying into our system. You know, they were paying taxes
with no benefits.
And they essentially paid to have themselves be abducted, which is a horrific tragedy. And so just the idea that should be our focus, that we should be spending billions of dollars to hire, Gestapo-like street patrols is absurd when people don't have a place to live. I'm okay if things are more expensive if it means there's no homeless. I'm okay if things are more expensive if it means there's no hungry. This is doing neither of those things. It is creating children without parents. It is creating households without families. It is creating holes in our business sector. If that's something you're concerned about, these are business owners and people who make our economy work. And we are just undercutting that in the name of xenophobia.
Yeah. Anybody who says
a few people can get rich.
Exactly. I mean, anybody who says that, they believe in the American dream of people wanting to better their lives, that's what these people are doing. I mean, we know that there's so many, the ACLU released a study that showed that over 82% of those being detained have zero violent criminal record. So this is not helping people have safer communities. This is specifically targeting those that come from a specific country or come from a specific place. And I think it's important to mention, people don't just leave their home country where their community is because it's like convenient, or, oh, we're just going to go to the United States and restart our entire lives. No, they are fleeing from something. And is either the effects of American imperialism and our colonial tactics in other developing nations, is because of political targeting from certain regimes that are specifically going after citizens that are political dissidents, or it's economic collapse where people just can't even afford to provide basic security or safety for their kids. And they decide to make the trek through oftentimes dangerous situations, going over oceans, going through treacherous rainforests, or just natural hostile regions. Like these are people who are going through incredible trauma just to get here, and then not even have basic security systems. Most of them are living in inner metropolitan areas where there isn't a whole lot of security or safety or financial opportunity. And then on top of that, after all of that struggle, they are then brutalized by a federal agent, where oftentimes they're ripped from their homes. If there's a single mother that is taken, those kids are just left in their homes unattended. What happens to them? The Trump administration has shown they don't really care. And in most cases, they go weeks, if not months, without communicating with family members they have been ripped from. And I don't know how anybody justifies this. I have no more words on that. Like, I'm speechless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially when, even for these refugees and people who are coming here seeking a better life, the best case scenario for them is still to have their labor exploited, as they're paid less than everyone else. Again, they pay into our tax system without getting anything back. Mm-hmm. And they're always under the threat of being incarcerated for really doing nothing wrong, nothing more so than what anyone else does on an ordinary day.
No, there are large agricultural conglomerates who hire a lot of undocumented labor because they know that through the threat of ICE, they can continue to pay them pennies. And no undocumented person can negotiate their wages or join a union, because as soon as they become adversarial to those conglomerates, they can just call ICE and get them out of there. And you're not going to get that. I mean, that labor was already applied to that corporation. They already got the benefit of that person putting their backs on the line. And now they can just send them to El Salvador because they didn't comply with what those business owners wanted.
Yeah. And I mean, the most harrowing part about all of this for me is that, one, that this is still going on, is that at the end of the day, ICE is still in Minnesota. They're still in Chicago. They're in LA. We have federal troops here in Washington D.C. Fully armed and ready for, well, not ready. They're usually ill prepared, but trigger happy. And we have people in detention camps. There are federal bids going out to build out more of our concentration camps. Usually going to private industries where they take all of the money. They then offer no basic human rights services for people who are detained. They don't have access to the restroom. They don't have food. They don't have medical attention. And the fact that it's gone on for so long, I think really speaks to this moment we're in right now, where people haven't known what to do. They've protested, they're upset, and we keep getting prodded and pushed to the limit. And it seems like we're really at an inflection point where people are ready to stand up and make some actual change. The question is, does that come from the people, or are the people able to bring that out through our elected representatives in Congress?
Yeah, I mean, you really got me down another rabbit hole of just that the for-profit portion of how all of this terror is being conducted across the country. 90% of our detention centers are operated by Core Civic and the Geo Group, which are two corporations, for-profit corporations that are directly benefiting from detaining human beings, keeping them in cages. It is absolutely disgusting to see. And not that it would be any better if it was our own government doing or starting these internment camps, but it blows my mind even more that people don't see the transparent, see-through corruption of large conglomerates who are stuffing their pockets of dollars by ripping people from their communities, which they were economic contributors in, where they had family members, where they had loved ones, where they went to school, and it's unjustifiable.
Yeah, well, and I was speaking to Representative Maxwell Frost in Florida earlier this year about this, because he, after much deliberation, he was able to access and tour the internment camp there, Alligator Alcatraz. And one of the things that stuck out to him, and he relayed to me, was how much of it was privately run. Even the security there, it isn't National Guard, it isn't Border Patrol. At this specific facility, they hired 3 different private security firms to run operations. They then hired a private medical company in this detainment facility. And one of the reasons they did this was, of course, to make these people who own those companies, a lot of them are donors to the Republican Party and Donald Trump, is to funnel this money directly to them. Another reason is it allows them to avoid transparency. Maxwell Frost, he was denied looking at the medical center because it was privately run. He was denied from getting information about what these security firms were doing there because it's a private company. And so they use these as a shield. And, not to always hearken 1930s Germany, but this is the same thing that the Reich did, is that they outsourced their camps, is that they were run privately. And it's this corporate private partnership that honestly, that fascism is known for, is how they're allowed to get away with this, because they can siphon this public money to these private interests that then gets filtered back to a select number of politicians who control the power.
Yeah, 100%. And we know that this is the playbook that's being done everywhere in the country. I mean, in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar tried to visit a detention center in her own congressional district and was turned away. And the only justification that DHS gave to her was, yeah, we have to upkeep some maintenance, so you can't come see what the living conditions are in these people. Who is giving a crap about maintenance, as she has constituents of hers that are being held in cages without proper nutrition, without proper care, without medical assistance? I mean, there was a report, I don't know, I need to fact check the accuracy, but just to show just how sensationalized a lot of this is, there is reports of ICE agents, I can't even say it, they are destroying the testicles of some detainees that they have there. Like, I can't even, that is like banned from every single international law. They specifically talk about that in the genocide conventions of like, this is genocidal. You are preventing people from passing on their lineage. Like, and I can't even articulate it. It's insane to see.
I mean, between that and the the sexual assault that is rampant in these facilities. I mean, one of the most egregious examples was someone, I don't know if they'll actually be held accountable, but one of the guards at these facilities, they were exchanging sex with someone they were being detained with in exchange for them to contact their family.
Jesus.
They said, I won't let you see your family, even though you're here without charges, you're here without a court date, you're here without a lawyer. I'm also not going to let you see or talk to your family unless you allow me to sexually assault you. And that's just the stuff we know about.
And those are actual ICE agents. Imagine those people that are pretending to be ICE agents. All you need is a mask. All you need is a patch that says ICE. And apparently you have full justification to go to people's communities and detain them. Like, there's no badge numbers for these people. There's no transparency. They're allowed to wear masks in unmarked vehicles without license plates. Like, what is happening in our country that people are just letting continue to happen? And by people, I mean those that continue to support this administration that has the potential to brutalize them and their families. Oftentimes, people don't share that same energy or compassion or emotion unless it's directly affecting them. This is directly affecting you. This is happening in your neighborhoods. And who's to say that you're not next? Alex Pretti and Nicole Good were not undocumented people. These were citizens of the United States that were murdered in cold blood. You need to be able to stand up for your own rights. This is a civil rights issue. And unless people recognize that, it will continue to get violated everywhere in the country.
Yeah, no, I mean, countries and societies are judged by how they treat the least advantaged of their populace. Yep. And if a refugee looking for freedom, or even a criminal here, if they are not afforded the same rights to a fair trial, to receive their day in court, then none of us have those rights. Then there's nothing stopping this current administration from continuing these executions. If the agents see that they're being defended and praised, and that fundraisers are raising them millions of dollars for killing people on the streets, there's no reason that they're going to stop, because this is what they want to do. This is why they signed up. That and the $50K bonus.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talked to multiple Department of Homeland Security and Central Border Protection. I talked to so many of those detainee, or I'm flustered on my words. When I was in Minnesota, I talked to so many Department of Homeland Security and CBP agents that were just there to show force, to intimidate those that were protesting. And a lot of them were giddy. They were excited to be pepper spraying people. They were excited to be throwing tear gas. They were excited. And like you said, they signed up for this because it is something that brings them joy. It is depraved. I have kind of like a small compilation that we can watch that kind of showcases everything that I witnessed in Minneapolis. Most of this takes place after the general strike, which is what I originally went for, because it was just such a show of force, of collective power and solidarity. The morning after, immediately as I was getting prepared to leave, we got the notification that Alex Pretti was shot about a mile away from where I was staying. And so we knew that we had to go just see what the community response was going to be. Again, Minneapolis is a city that does not take crap from the federal government or infringement on their civil rights. And so we knew that they'd come out in full force. And this is kind of a short clip of everything that we experienced out there.
The Air Forces are creased, bro.
Bro got the middle school classics, bro.
They're creased.
What you got going on, dude? You got crease-ass Air Force.
There were over 50,000 of us out at the protest during the general strike yesterday, and now another one of our neighbors has been killed.
Go. Go.
People on the outside, they may just be, oh, it's not happening to me. It's not my problem, but we see those problems every day.
Do something! I don't want to hear one more soundbite on CNN. I don't want to hear one more clip on Fox News. Actually, do something.
You proud? Are you? Oh, you said fat. I can't hear you, fat. We're getting gas right now. They're doing flashbangs on people.
From the Medical Kitchen restaurant with coffee available.
Thank you. Thank you.
warming up.
Right here, like she's medic. Why are the food here?
So-
They volunteered to open this up.
They are the violent ones. They are the ones with the guns. They are the ones fucking gunning down and gassing us.
There's a student right there giving out hand warmers. It is below zero temperature.
The rest of the country needs to see this and understand that community is the only solution to the terror that is being brought to them by ICE, and people will continue to come out if ICE continues to brutalize their communities.
So this was the vigil that was at the spot where Alex Pretti died. This was about 5 hours after he was killed. So this is how fast Minneapolis residents responded to that injustice to come show solidarity. And this all happened on Nicollet. This, I can't even describe to you. There were two very distinct emotions that were happening simultaneously. Right here was grief. Right here was community. It was solidarity. It was people that recognized that the only way forward is together. And immediately up the street was this right here. So this was where most of the speaking was happening. This was the anger that people felt towards unjust institutions that were failing them. And this all happened within about 50 yards of each other. It was crazy. And you could move back and forth just to feel both of those intense emotions that the community was all simultaneously having together. And I can't describe the energy of what it felt like there. Two more things just to highlight is this community right here. This right here, I'm forgetting the name. I think it's, the Copper Hen. This is a bakery that is right there on Nicollet in uptown area in South Minneapolis. And they completely opened up their doors to people for warmth. Again, it was like -6, I think, at this time right here. They gave people food. They gave people coffee. They basically just gave like a touchdown point to where people could go to if they needed to just recoup themselves, gather their emotions before they returned with their fellow community members in the street. And just the coordination from all aspects of Minneapolis, the business community, the civilians, state officials, it was incredible. It really was incredible to see.
I mean, it really goes to show just the tight-knit necessities of building community like that. Because how easy it would have been for that restaurant or that, that bakery to just keep their doors closed, just lock it up, not say anything, and let it go. But they didn't. They opened it up. They wanted to help. They wanted to continue. And because they were open, it allowed people to stay there and to keep warm and use the restroom and continue to exercise their rights. Because that's what's needed most of all is the opportunity to exercise your rights. Because as we've seen, especially most recently with the Second Amendment, any attempt to exercise it is going to be threatened. And that makes it all the more important to let people know that we're not going to let these rights be taken away.
Yeah, and a lot of these demonstrations have genuine costs. I mean, the economic strike that happened on Friday, many of the small businesses that closed down for the day operate on very thin margins to where losing one day of business can really make or break the longevity of your business. But they knew that the only way to get this message across to those in positions of power was to join in solidarity, was to join in community. And we were able to do grassroots fundraising to raise funds for a lot of these businesses who needed it the most. And that really demonstrates the equity that is generated from communities that understand the importance of collective action. Is there are ways that we can mitigate long-term disasters in order to start that initial momentum that's needed for collective and general solidarity against those oppressive regimes.
Yeah. Well, now the people there, they showed up, they protested. I actually had some relatives in Minnesota over the weekend. They were there for my niece's, she had a college basketball game in town. And they just happened to walk into the largest stadium in Minneapolis, and they were having this protesters' rights, this training, and they just kind of showed up and walked in and were like, all right, we're here, we can help while we're there. But they saw that immediate response. But that's in the immediate. What did you get from people that they want to see happen in the next days, weeks, months? I mean, I'm guessing the immediate demand is to have ICE out of Minnesota. That's what they've been asking and pleading with for weeks. But what does the solution to this look like to people who are living it in the most darkest sense?
Yeah, to reiterate your point, I mean, the biggest demand is that the Trump administration changes course, but they recognize that Trump has shown that he's hardened to the idea of a couple communities demanding for their civil rights in their lives. That's not really going to change his own personal political ambitions or motives. But another big aspect that they were trying to demand was state and local officials to utilize their power in order to protect communities from ICE. Now, Governor Tim Walz and Jacob Frey have both said that law enforcement should not cooperate with ICE in a lot of these raids, which is a stepping stone. But many of the residents that I talked to and interviewed said that they want more than that. The Trump administration is acting outside the law. They are violating investigation procedure by having the federal government not share documents with state or local law enforcement officials. They are not collaborating on civil rights investigations into these killings that were done by federal agents. But people recognize that if the Trump administration is going to act outside of the law, we need local and state officials to do things like deploy the National Guard to protect their civilians from ICE agents who are going in and brutalizing communities. They want Minneapolis Police Department to actually stop and prevent ICE from continuing a lot of these raids that are unlawful and unjust. They want direct action that's done. And it seems to be that local officials are saying, that's what outside of our power, we're not able to do that. And Minneapolis residents are saying, we're witnessing people act outside their power. We're witnessing the Republican Party not give a shit about proper legal code or code of conduct. We need to fight back with as much power as we can. And if you as a state official or a local official are able to generate some sort of power or energy within the police departments that you are chief of, you should be able to do that, or you should at least try and make the attempt to do that.
Yeah, that's something I've been really curious about, because, the Governor Walz, he's said, he's inched closer and closer to doing something with the National Guard to the point where they have been activated. But I haven't seen what that means. I mean, does that mean they're there to protect property? Are they protecting ICE agents from protesters? Are they protecting protesters from agents? Are they just, keeping people home? Or are we not seeing anything come from this yet?
Yeah, I don't think that people feel safe. I mean, it's clear that's the reason why they're going out on a Friday in below zero temperature to demand change, is they need more. Yeah, I mean, I witness a lot of demonstrations in Minneapolis. I've seen it at home here in LA. I haven't been to DC, and I know that it's a very politically charged community. Obviously, you were at the epicenter of where all of the major decisions in this country are made. What have you witnessed out there on the ground in DC?
Yeah, no, people here are activated. DC has been under especially harsh conditions from the Trump administration. Thousands have lost their jobs because of him. We are under federal occupation with the National Guard. And when Alex Pretti was killed, people marched to ICE headquarters, very close to the White House. They filled the street. The streets nearby were blocked off, and they were there for hours, sharing stories of what's happened, demanding that ICE be abolished, demanding that Kristi Noem be impeached or resign and then held criminally accountable. But people here are, very much like people in Minnesota and people across the country. They're sick of seeing all of these norms or these protections that we thought we had go away. I was speaking with a woman on the ground there who, until Trump's second term, she had never been to a protest. She had never attended anything. She was a civil servant. So she just, head down, apolitical, doing her job. But that is an impossible reality for her now, because now she is being harmed by the Trump administration in every aspect of her life. She's seen friends get hurt, injured by ICE agents. She's seen loved ones lose their jobs. She's seen people deported. It's just not a situation that people can live through long term. And here, people are very much at a breaking point. There were, even amidst the snowstorms, where DC can't really handle snow very well, so most of the place has been shut down just because of the snow. But people are still showing up at ICE headquarters. They're still there with signs. They're still there with, with their bullhorns, protesting and yelling. and trying to make as much a nuisance there as they can until there is some sort of tangible change.
Where are most of the raids happening in the DC area? Is it in DC proper? Is it in Arlington? Where's it happening?
Yeah, so I guess Trump's federal action in DC can be broken up into his vanity projects and his xenophobic projects. National Guard is mostly for vanity purposes. They're placed places where Trump will see them because then he feels like a military dictator. They're on the National Mall, they're at tourist sites. They're not really doing anything. They just are there as, as decoration, essentially.
To show force, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, ICE, they have occasional targeted raids here. It's not as rampant in other places, but we see it a lot more in areas north of the Capitol, the Columbia Heights neighborhood. Columbia Heights, there were a lot of traffic stops originally, but the community here has done an incredible job building a network of the same thing we're seeing in Minneapolis, where there are ICE observers, people who keep an eye out on where the ICE agents meet and where they disperse to go do their raids or conduct their stops. And then they alert the community. There's these networks of chats and groups where people are alerted and told, hey, don't take this road because they're doing stops here. Hey, they're going to be at this Home Depot, or they're headed, to this Home Depot in Northeast. So let's steer clear of that area. So they really have done an excellent job at mitigating the damage we're seeing here, but we're occupied nonetheless. And seeing these agents, seeing these officers, seeing, active duty military here every day, it wears on people.
Yeah, I mean, people don't want to feel like they live in a fascist military police state. And I think even though they might have for a long time, now they're seeing it on with their eyes. They're seeing it visibly. We know that surveillance has been something that has been heavily implemented since 2002, 2003 through the Patriot Act. But I think people now recognize that they're collecting databases of people who are attending protests and using that as political leverage to either prosecute people for being political dissidents or domestic terrorists in the eyes of Department of Homeland Security through, surveillance systems like Palantir and other facial recognition software. And I think that people recognize that their rights are fleeting. These are fickle things that we don't have unless we protect them and we demand them. It's not something that we can just trust to those in positions of power to respect, because as the Trump administration is demonstrating, institutions that we thought were so rigid and guardrailed are very easily dismissible. Most of the Trump's action and the pacing of this administration has been so expedited, in large part because of the bureaucracy in our judicial system. There are so many federal judges that have said that Trump's actions are unconstitutional after they've already taken place. We know that with Abrego Garcia, who got deported from the country. Federal judge said, you cannot do this. He was already in CCOT in El Salvador. So the Trump administration throws their hand up like, oh, we got this one wrong, but we're not going to redo those actions. We're not going to use federal resources to bring those people back. So sorry, you're on your own. That is the mentality of the Trump admin. Do things first, ask questions later, apologize, ask for forgiveness instead of permission, but none of the population is forgiving them.
Right. And we see the same thing at our larger institutions. The Department of Education, again, is a great example where they just fired a ton of people. And it turned out that was illegal and unconstitutional because the Department of Education is legally mandated to carry out certain tasks. But it took so long to go through the court system to reaffirm what those laws are that at the end, they just kind of threw up their hands and said, well, they haven't been working here for like 3 months. We've been operating without them. And so the court said, okay, I guess we'll just go on, but just don't do it again.
Yeah.
They have no reason not to.
It is crazy. We saw that Elon Musk and the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, they mishandled Social Security information from citizens. And we're now finally finding that out after 8 months of Elon Musk no longer being in that position. It's not like they didn't know that they were mishandling Social Security info. They know what they're committing. They know the fraud that they are doing with their actions in the federal government. It's just they're waiting until there's transparency later on after it's too late to recorrect those failures.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, they're banking on people to trust those guardrails in our system, the slowness of justice, because even with the Social Security information, they knew what they were doing. It wasn't mishandled. They handled it the way that they wanted to.
Right.
And people, there were whistleblowers, there were reporters who uncovered all of these misdeeds that they were doing all along the way. It's just that it took 9 months for the courts to force them to admit that they had done something wrong. And
And
by now,
along the way, those
yeah,
those whistleblowers are literally just written off as left-wing agitators or part of this global network to destroy Western civilization. Like, these are the direct words of Stephen Miller and Marco Rubio, of like people who have questions about the legitimacy of Trump's actions or whether or not they fall in our legal code, actually hate the country and are unpatriotic. That this is their playbook.
right. I mean, with Stephen Miller, it's mostly a case of him. Honestly, it seems like he kind of just hates himself and everything in existence and wants to make it all as miserable as he is. But for him, it's very clear it's all about consolidating power and authority under the executive branch, so that as long as Trump's there, or as long as someone who aligns with his ideals is there, that they can push through any illegal action without consequence, or with consequence so delayed that it has no real effect.
Yeah, I mean, Trump quoted Mussolini on his True Social or his Twitter. I think it was right after he got arrested. But he said, a leader who has security in mind does not violate the law. And it's like, you can bend that to anything. If you say that you're doing something in the aims of protecting security, what can't you get away with? You can get away
Right.
with anything.
And unfortunately, in the case of our current president, that sentiment was upheld by the Supreme Court, who said that anything Trump specifically does, as long as he's president or says he's doing it while in capacity of president, is protected by immunity. And it's gonna take a lot of work to get those sort of on the books interpretations of law undone. And I think that it starts here. It starts now. It starts with us taking action and exposing these misdeeds when they arise, and making sure that people are held accountable.
Yeah, I think it's a long road ahead before we get genuine reforms that are going to put people first. But I think that people in the country recognize that that is not what's needed in the immediate future. We want to strive to get there. But what we need to focus on right now is knowing who our neighbors are, getting in touch with people within our locality and within our control, because these are the ways that we are going to defend against external pressure from an authoritarian government. We are going to be able to give that solace and community and solidarity with those who need it the most, which are those that are the closest vicinity to us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I feel like these are lessons we can learn from Minnesota. It's things we can learn from the community response in LA. It's what we can learn from how people responded to ICE in Chicago. And it just shows that human nature is resilient, and that no matter what opposition we are faced with, we will find a way to return to justice.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who talks about politics so much, I have a lot of friends who aren't as in touch who say, "How are you not depressed all the time, seeing everything so terrible? How can you remain sane?" And my answer always to them is, I am optimistic about the future. It's hard to be in a lot of cases. It's hard to be when I'm watching civilians get murdered. But if you can't envision a better world, that is the only thing that is going to allow you to continue to push through. And we have to know that there is a brighter future. When I see unions successful at fighting back, like what happened with the Ford auto worker after Trump tried to get him fired after flipping him off, that union, the UAW, stepped up to get that person their job back. That is collective power. That is what happens when workers recognize, who cares about how authoritarian the government is? We can fight back as long as we do it together. Individually, we have no chance against the federal government of the United States. But collectively, we are the ones who make this system operate and run, and we have that exact same power to demand the change that is necessary.
Yeah. And I hope that the general strike we saw in Minnesota is just a small taste of what that collective action can do. There's been talk of a general nationwide strike, which, if that were to come to fruition, that could totally change the makeup of what it means for people to have power, for us to collectively utilize our strength, which in a capitalist society is our ability to produce capital. If we can truly control that, then we can actually see some historic, monumental change beyond, just voting to slightly fund DHS less.
Yeah, or we have 7 people that are supposed to be the opposition party that vote for increases to DHS funding because they're going to get it right this time. They're going to do more safety training and de-escalation tactics because clearly ICE is capable of de-escalating situations. Like, I think a lot of people are dissatisfied in that. And while I recognize voting is an important tool that we need, we cannot get to where we need to go without direct action and community responses.
Yeah. And I hope, it's as I've been reporting on, both Trump administrations now and before that, immigration in Arizona pretty heavily. I see the need and the desire more to build these community groups, that as there are factions of our society that are more and more online and less out in the real world, that there's also this drive for people to build these community groups, to grow mutual aid, and to find ways to effectively help their community while pushing back against, this administration and others like it that want power.
Yeah, we really can only get through together. And I think that's the message that needs to echo in the minds of everybody who is pissed off at what's happening.
Well, what's the next for you? Are you, you're back, you're out of Minnesota. You got any other trips planned? You got any on the field reporting going on?
Nothing in the works right now. A lot of my focus is going to be continuing to make sure communities here are doing well, or they're organizing in similar ways. I want to share a lot of what I learned out there from incredible organizers with people that I'm in touch with here in Southern California. I know Santa Ana continues to get raids every single day, and that's a community right here in Northern Orange County that needs as much help and community as possible. So we'll continue to do that, continue moderating the situation, and remaining hopeful and optimistic for the future. What's next in the future for you, Cam?
Yeah, so last week I actually got a tip about a new detention facility that ICE is trying to open up in Utah. I'm still looking into the details, but if it does come the way that they've proposed it, it would be by far the largest detention center in the country. It would have over 7,000 person capacity. It would be privately run. It looks like the people who would be getting the bids on these would be private companies reaping a lot of financial benefit. And much like the other detention centers in the country, there's no promise that people there will get medical care, that they will have privacy in the form of a restroom even, or that they will even have a bed. And so I'm checking into that, but it just shows that as we continue to push back against the administration, they are still going full steam ahead with their intentions. They still want thousands of people in these detention centers, whether they're guilty of a crime or not.
Yeah, I mean, the more people, the more money, right? It's really that simple, and it's terrifying to see that pattern continue. And there needs to be done something about it.
Yeah, well, and I've also reported in the past on how different communities have actually stopped detention centers from being built in their communities because they found out about it. And so, again, it all goes back to letting people know what's going on and giving them information, which is the power to act.